Heliotrope was a slow burn, epic fantasy that felt like I was playing an old familiar video game, and I absolutely loved it. Hello everyone, welcome back to A Fictional Escapist. My name is Kris, and today's video is my Heliotrope by Palmer Pickering book review. I believe this is a standalone, don't quote me on that, it may be part of a bigger series, but it does feel like a complete book in itself. It is one epic adventure. Before we jump into the review, make sure you check in that description box down below for links to my social media and Discord should you want to come along for the ride. This book was truly something magical, and it came to me in a time of my life when I really did need something that could guide me through a difficult part of what was happening at that given time. This book felt like a hug, it felt like I was being handheld, but in a way that made me excited to get to the adventure that we were going on. This book follows Talio. He's a retired soldier who's just happy to live out his remaining days as a humble farmer and taking an occasional masonry job from the throne. He's been commissioned to create a mosaic masterpiece, a pear tree for the current queen so she can gaze upon this pear tree daily, coupled with creatures that bring this piece to life. Seeing his work, she then insists that he do some more, restoring some old stonework across from a training ground within the castle. He agrees and sets to work across the field from his old nemesis. While working on the pattern, it does become apparent that the ancient magic of the heliotrope pattern, which he's now working on, has been forgotten, and no one realizes what power they're currently sitting upon. Before Talio can repair the powerful pattern that is the heliotrope, his life changes forever, and he's fighting for his life once more. A bloody coup breaks out, and it's apparently time of peace is over. Talio now must flee with his new apprentice and also the hidden heir to the crown. Both of them just children, and both greatly resembling the two children that he had lost many years ago. They take to the forest where Dismora, his cousin, lives, secluded in her own magic-infused sanctuary, and they use their time to heal and hatch a plan to venture out to the other hidden heliotropes across the lands. This book is full of adventure, dangerous political intrigue, and royalty on the other side of crazy. This was one hell of an epic tale that you need to be a part of. I have so many praises for this 780-page tome, but I will say this book may not be for everyone, so stay with me. The first point of note is this book is extremely slow-paced, in my opinion. We as the reader really do sit with our characters here as they make their decisions and go through their everyday lives leading up to and during this adventure. To say it is slow does not mean that it was not entertaining. I would argue that in this case it is quite the opposite. By learning who our characters are and the environments that they're in, I became more and more invested in the storyline as time went on, no matter how fast we were moving through it. It did make me feel eventually like I was part of this family and I was going with them on this adventure. I was loading up a horse and I was going with them wherever they went. Speaking of world, we get to explore several different towns, cities, and castles. Each place feels so different than the last, and the politics and dangers that needed to be navigated were complex. This means our characters needed to be smart enough or learn to be smart enough along the way to be able to cope, particularly with the question of who is an ally and who isn't. Who can I trust really in a world that doesn't trust itself? We do also experience multiple seasons while we're in different towns, and we really do get the feel of, what a long and hard winter feels like as opposed to how good the hunting might be in springtime. By doing this, Pickering has painted such a full picture and made the world feel huge. My next praise would be characters. So our characters here sort of fall in and out of the story and each other's lives naturally. We don't just stay with one person the whole time. We are introduced to many different characters and they intertwine within the storyline and the adventure that is this story. And it all feels like your everyday life. We have people that come into our lives every so often. They pop up when we need them, they go when they don't. It's like having adult friendships. You don't really see them all that often, but you know that they're there if they want to, and they come into your lives when you have a need for them. That's what this felt like. It felt so real. because they came in and out of each other's lives so naturally, we can see how and why the relationships worked in the way that they did. And we also have a really good understanding of our main protagonists as we progress through the story. Each character that we have is there for a purpose, and they bring a new element to the table. If you're someone who loves the found family trope, this is absolutely going to be a book that you want to pick up. There is no bigger found family that I've come across than in Heliotrope by Palmer Pickering. If you're someone who loves sitting with your characters and stewing in those emotions in a slow way that builds throughout the tale, you're gonna find something here that you will enjoy. I will say that humans are not the only thing that develop here. If you love animal companions, the animals in this book, particularly the horses, were characters on their own. They all had personalities that differed just as much as the humans did, and it was really lovely. We had plenty of animal companions, from a cranky stag who had an overzealous libido to a majestic and intelligent hunting falcon. They were so beautifully described. They were characters in of themselves, and it really helped to bring this element of the story to life as much as our human counterparts. The horses really did steal the show here, and it reminded me very much of how Jenny Wirtz described horses and the relationships into Ride Hell's Chasm. They became a character. They weren't just a subplot. They weren't there for convenience. They were characters in of themselves. These horses were delightful, they were stubborn, they were loyal, and sometimes downright amusing, as these beautiful beasts can be in real life. I mean, I'm not a huge horse fan myself, but I have seen them be like real cheeky with each other and humans riding them, and it's just fun to sort of watch how their brains work, and that you got that here in Heliotrope. The last praise I'll give this book will be the magic system. So there were some really magical elements to this book, starting with the namesake Heliotrope. Heliotropes were a large collection of magic infused stone which had been formed into an enchanted pattern. The history of these shapes was explored, and it's rich and beautiful in various stages throughout the book. We learn that these ancient patterns were used for battles between the mage classes and to infuse soldiers with incredible energy before a battle, but it doesn't stop there. To dance the sword on a heliotrope would give the dancer energy and life. These dances were also described beautifully and powerfully, and I was absolutely enamored with how it worked. But the magic doesn't stop there. The Guardian and the Mage magic developed with our characters as each person found their own strength and voice on this adventure, and it was really quite something to follow along with. What is interesting to me is that this book has a few features that I don't necessarily gravitate towards when it comes to choosing my next read. It has a third-person omniscient narration style, which left very little to the imagination. Anything and everything was described here. So if you're someone who gets rather annoyed at having everything handed to you on a silver platter, from what our team is having for breakfast in the morning right into what they're doing right before bed, this may be one that annoys you in that sense of the word. And that doesn't necessarily work for me either, but we learn everything and anything about our characters through this narration style. However, due to the slow pace and the build-up of the relationships, I was so connected to these characters by the end that I really did want to know what they were going to have for dinner that night and if I could join, because some of the food that was described in this book was amazing. I have to say that I was mesmerized by Palmer's entry into the epic fantasy realm, and I really hope that there is more coming to us in this genre, because whilst it was a slow narration that, you know, described everything, it was also beautiful and epic. Have I said that enough? I hope people give this one a shot, particularly if they need something that's a little bit easier on the brain at any given time. Even though it's quite long, it really was a beautiful fantasy to jump into. Have you read Heliotrope? Are you going to pick this one up? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like the content, give it one of those. If you want to see more of it, click subscribe at your will. I'll catch you in the next video. Ciao.